Okay, so really this is just an update on the last part of the tutorial with regards to how this spell checker actually works. Now, this is the code that we were left with in the last part, and the problem being here is if we were to come over and search, for example, the word academy, which is obviously spelt correctly, we still have a suggestion returned here, despite the fact that the word academy has actually been found in the dictionary. Now the reason for this is in our code we're actually checking in this line if the word exists within this words row array. Now obviously MySQL fetch associative array, this function here, will actually return an associative array of the results. However, the problem here is that we're actually looping through each result, and that will grab each result by its ID, or its key rather. So the problem here is that when we're doing this, words row will only contain actually one single value, which is the first returned by this query. So to test this, I'm going to go ahead and use print r just up here and exit underneath. Now inside print r, I'm just going to type in words, which is the results that we retrieve from here, and let's just go ahead and take a look at the result. So when I refresh here, you can see, oops, yeah, we need to say MySQL fetch assoc in there. So printr is just going to print a textual representation of our array, and MySQL fetch associative array function actually goes ahead and takes an array from the results. So hopefully that's clear. When we refresh, you can see we've only got the first word that's returned. Now obviously because we're using a while loop, that would loop through every single result, and therefore this renders this inArray function pointless in this case, because we're searching for the word inside the array that only contains one result. So what we need to do is, to make this spell checker actually work properly and more accurately, is to, I mean, it would still work if the word's spelled incorrectly, that doesn't make a difference, but with words that are currently in the dictionary, you may find you'll run into trouble. So what we're going to go ahead and do is remove this inArray function here, and we're going to make a few changes to our code. Now one thing you might have noticed is I've replaced left with substring here. I did that just before I recorded this video. Essentially substring function in MySQL works the same as the substring function in PHP. Notice though we're starting at 1 because MySQL will take each character as starting at 1, whereas in PHP we use 0. So this is essentially the same as the left function that we used in the last part of the tutorial. So apart from that, all of the code is correct, and it's as you saw in the last part, but we're going to make a few changes. Now I'll explain first what we actually need to go ahead and do, and the first thing to do is to actually check whether the word exists in this database table. By checking if the word exists, we can run this while loop or not. And obviously if we don't run the while loop, the output will be empty and therefore will return false. So what I'm going to do just up here is I'm going to say words, let's say words count, word exists, and I'm going to create a new MySQL query, and this is going to return the count of the word that we specified just up here. So let's go ahead and use the MySQL query function, and inside we want to go ahead and select the count. So we're using the MySQL count function, and we want to count the word from English, which remember is the database table name, and we want to say where word equals, and in here we want to check for the word. So basically this is either going to return 1 or 0. If the word is found, for example if we were to type academy, that word does exist in the database table, and therefore this would return 1 because of the count function, that will return 1. If the word isn't found, that will return 0. So we can either in this case return a 1 or a 0. Now if you were to have, say, academy twice in the database table, count will return 2. But in this case we know that each word is unique and the same word isn't duplicated over and over again, and therefore in this case with regards to our database table content, we'll only return a 1 or a 0. Now what we want to go ahead and do is we want to run this while loop if the result is not found. So if we typed in academy and it's found, there's no need to run this while loop to give us suggestions. So what we want to do up here is we want to create an if statement and surround the while loop in that if statement. So we don't want to run this while loop if the word has actually been found in the database table. So all we need to do is we need to use the MySQL result function, and this will return the result from this query up here, this word exists query. So we're going to go ahead and type word exists. We want to take the data from the first row returned, which is going to be the only row returned, and we want to make sure this if this equals 0. So if the result equals 0, i.e. if the word hasn't been found in the dictionary, we can then go ahead and actually loop through the database results and or the query results and actually make suggestions. So now that this is in place, let's go ahead and type in academy once more. Let's just return to the original index page. Let's go ahead and type in academy, and you'll see that the difference now is that it says academy spelled correctly or no suggestions found, obviously owing to the functionality that we created earlier down here. So now that that's done, let's go ahead and try and spell academy incorrectly. So we're going to put an A instead of an E. So if I click check, you see that academy is one of the suggestions found. The same with the word similar. If we were to spell that incorrectly, similar, then we have the list of results. So now we know that the spell checker is functioning to its best ability. In the last part, the spell checker was working, but it didn't take into account the fact that the word exists already, so that was a mistake on my part. Okay, so another thing just to mention is we may need to go ahead and escape the data when we use the substring of the word just here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to say MySQL real escape string and escape that data as well. That's just to ensure that we have as much SQL injection as possible. So aside from that small security update, the main problem here was that we needed to perform an additional query in order to check if that word had been found or not. And if that word hasn't been found, i.e. the result equals 0 from this count function inside MySQL, then we go ahead and we loop the results and return the suggestions. So that was just a quick update on the functionality of that spell checker, and now hopefully we are all working and good.